Hey everybody, happy Wednesday night. And this is our last of the year album ranking. And what a great way to finish off the year. We are doing one of my favorite bands for a number of reasons, which we'll get into in a bit. But yeah, man, Nazareth, killer band, been around forever. We just earlier this year we lost Dan McCafferty, the singer, and not too long ago before that we lost Manny Charlton. But man, the legacy goes on. The band is still continuing, as far as I know, with a new singer and new drummer. We lost Daryl Sweet many years before that, but anyway, the band's continuing on. But what a legacy of just absolutely fantastic records. I mean, if you really want to get into some awesome 70s blues rock, I mean, I can't think of a better band to start with than Nazareth. So. But that's what we're talking about. And to help me in choosing our top 5 Nazareth records, I have my two partners in crime, Martin Popoff and Pete Pardo. How you gentlemen doing?
Doing okay, Hack. Looking forward to this.
Awesome, man. Yeah, me too. Everything good?
Everything's good. Happy holidays and all that good stuff to everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Hope everybody had a good Christmas and a good holiday. So this is the time. So hopefully everything's good. And the weather's getting warmer, right? No more blizzards. That's
hopefully not.
For now. That was
after this
crazy.
week anyway.
Yeah. Alrighty. So usual thing, I go around and I ask, what was your first exposure to the band? So we'll start with Martin. So when did you first hear about or listen to or check out Nazareth? What was your first exposure to the band?
Wow, real soft spot for Nazareth for me. This is actually one of the first heavy bands I ever listened to, ever got new albums by. So yeah, definitely Razmanaz, pretty sure as a new release, 73. So I would have been 10 years old. But before that, might have had and heard One Sabbath, One Zeppelin, One Purple, maybe.
Right.
But Nazareth definitely right in there, getting them all as new releases after that. So Razmanaz was a huge impact with that crazy voice and pretty heavy, and they looked really cool. Those murky pictures in the gatefold and stuff, and of course up here in Canada, this was one of Nazareth's most friendliest territory. They were always touring around here. They just felt almost like a Canadian band in a way, but they just definitely felt like somebody who had an affinity for Canada. So that always helped too.
Yeah, they were definitely selling more albums up here than it was here in the UK. That's where they were selling. So
Germany too, and later on Brazil turned out to be
okay. Cool. What about yourself, Pete?
I was a little bit later. I didn't. I don't think I really got into Nazareth. I think the first album I bought by them was the Snaz live album.
Oh, okay.
81. I bought that when it first came out, and then I kind of worked my way backwards. But like I jumped onto them with that live album. I bought the 2XS studio album when it came out. I remember thinking, this is kind of light. I thought they were heavier than this, and then I started listening to the 70s albums. I'm like, oh, okay, well that explains that. That's where the good stuff is. So, but and I've been listening to them ever since. I kind of jumped off the train a little bit during the late 80s into the 90s, and then got back into them pretty heavy again. They've got some really solid latter period albums. So, but just a really, really solid band all around. So, it sucks that like 3 of them of the original guys are gone, but unfortunately.
Yeah, but they're still going on. They're still continuing as far as I know. So, yeah. I got the atypical story, right? So I don't know, 10, 11 years old. I'm in my uncle's Trans Am, and he's not much older than I am, 6 years. and he pops an 8-track into the Trans Am. And it was one of the first times I heard like heavy guitar, because up until then I'm listening to like, Chum AM, all this poppy Donny Osmond, that kind of stuff. And then the first time I'm hearing like heavy guitar, and I'm like, the little hairs on the back of your neck stand up, right? And man, I got to get me some of this. And and I did a video a while back. I think it was the top 5 or 10 albums that got me playing guitar. And Nazareth, this was Nazareth's greatest hits, right? And when I heard Bad Bad Boy and my White Bicycle and all those, oh my god, I was like, this is the best shit on the planet right here. So they were my first gateways, if you will, into like heavy rock. And yeah, ever since then I've absolutely loved Nazareth. So
Yeah,
there
but
you go.
Manny's guitar tone was always so.
Oh god.
And then you had that voice. I mean,
Yeah.
Granted, in the wake of Nazareth, the early years, you eventually got, Brian Johnson, obviously, and then Axl Rose, who kind of
Axl Rose,
similar type
even
of singer.
Tyler to an extent, right?
To an extent, but man, nobody had that gravelly roar like McCaffrey did.
No,
early on like that. I mean, he was singing like that up until the very end, right? I mean, the guy just was such an original, such a potent voice.
I mean, I was going to talk about this later, but the thing with Dan, I mean, he had that rasp, but sometimes the guy will have the rasp when he's belting, but that's all he can do. But this guy could sing anything. This guy could sing the phone book. He can do the ballads, the more tender stuff, just as well as he could belt it. I mean, he was just a fantastic, vocalist all around, right? Just amazing. Yeah. Alrighty, so we're gonna go around. We're picking our top 5 records. There's quite a few albums in their catalog, but we're choosing our 5 favorite records. So we're gonna go around the clock here. So we're gonna start with Martin, and then we're gonna do Pete, and then myself. So Martin, what have you got for number 5?
All right, for number 5, I'm going with Big Dogs, April 15th, 2011. So pretty recent. It's the second to last one with Dan before he has to bow out because of his COPD, and he's out of the band. And of course, as you mentioned, they've actually done 2 records with Carl Sentence now. But yeah, got to interview the band for most of these records later on, so it's good to kind of get the stories behind them. But I just love how late in the career they kind of ended up for almost maybe the second time in their career actually having a sound. And it's this really interesting production sound they get. This one's produced by Jimmy Murrison, the longtime guitarist, along with Jan Roulier, who kind of does a lot of their productions in the later years. And they've got this really kind of big, boomy and distorted and really muscular and cool and slightly different production sound that they get on these records, which helps them have a sound. But they're also kind of like slower and doomier and heavier. And there's definitely a really heavy bluesiness to them. But there's some good up-tempo stuff as well. I love No Mean Monster on here. Radio is like just such a great reminiscing song about listening to the radio. And then Dan's voice later years like this is really starting to fail. You can hear he's sounding really growly. All that firsthand and secondhand smoke and all them jars of beer, really weighing on him. But I just love the depth, the amount of fight still left in him. And Butterfly, this beautiful, beautiful ballad towards the end is amazing as well. The Toast is a good, funny song about how every time they'd go out anywhere, especially in all this Eastern Europe and Russia stuff, they'd basically sit down and they'd be like force-fed vodka toasts, right? And it's this funny song about just getting loaded because you have to go with the hospitality of in Eastern Europe when they're doing this to you, right? So that was a funny one as well. But just basically, a good solid album with a sound. And it's entertaining and it's up and down and it's a little bit of everything throughout. So yeah, Big Dogs 2011.
Cool. Yeah. They did get sort of circle around back to the good stuff right at the very end, right? Yeah. All right, Pete, what do you got for number 5?
All right, for my number 5, I'm gonna go to 1973 with Loud and Proud.
Okay.
Very cool album, pretty heavy album actually. But what's interesting, this, when you really think about it, Nazareth were one of the great bands that did great covers. They
Yes.
always, on most of their early albums, they always had at least one cover, sometimes more than one. I mean, you got 3 great covers on here. You got Teenage Nervous Breakdown, which is a Little Feat song. Lowell George wrote that. They do it tremendously. Of course, This Flight Tonight, Joni Mitchell, tremendous how they just totally reshape that song and make it their own. And then this haunting take on the Dylan song, The Ballad of Hollis Brown, which is also great. But then you got, Go Down Fighting and Not Faking It, which are just absolutely terrific. Child is the Sun, or Child in the Sun, I mean. Great production on this. It's heavy, but yet it's catchy at the same time. It's bluesy, it's folky. It's like, that's the one good thing about Nazareth. They could do boogie, they could do like proto metal, they could do folk, they could do like this kind of weird country thing, they could do blues. They did it all, and you get it all on this album. And that's my number 5. Loud and Proud. Cool album title too.
That's a great pick. So in going, I mean, I'm real familiar with their 70s stuff and some of the early 80s stuff, but I went and listened to the 90s stuff and whatever, and and there's definitely some duds in there, but this album I particularly took a shine to, and I thought, wait a minute, am I crazy? Let me listen to it again. No, I even like it more. No, I even like it's one of those things that one of those records that just grew on me, and man, I really like Move Me. Around the time of it's between No Jive, which is not great, and Boogaloo, but that album to me just sort of stood out. It, I mean, and then I was reading about it, like what was going on. The album came out in '94. The guitar player, basically, it's mainly a Billy Rankin album. He had a huge amount of credits on the record. Around that period, like, honestly, a lot of this stuff was really hit or miss for me, but this was, like I said, diamond in the rough. It's got some really great hooky songs on it. The guitar work is just, I thought it was fantastic. Just a straight up great rock and roll album. Just starting off with, Let Me Be Your Dog. It's got this beautiful hooky guitar line that runs underneath it that I love. Can't Shake Those Shakes. It's, your old time rock and roll type song. It's got that sort of 70s vibe to it, but it's just played very well. It's just done so well. Crack Me Up is a fantastic song, and it's got this part that just sneaks in there pre-chorus, and it's killer. Move Me, I mean, one thing with Nazareth, like you said, they do like a variety of material. When they do their ballads, these guys are like, they were doing power ballads before power ballads were a thing, and they can continue that tradition with this record. Move Me is a really well done hooky ballad with some really nice changes, and man, does Dan sound great on that record. On that song. Steamroller, this is another awesome big riff rocker, and then it kind of trail off from there. It kind of gets a little spotty after that, but that was just those songs are just so well played, so well done. I love the sound of the record. It's not cluttered sounding at all. Everything kind of sits. It does have a little bit of that sort of, that sheen, you know what I mean? That 80s, well, it's a 94 record, but it still has a little bit of that sheen to it, but it's not cluttered. It's clear, everything kind of sits nicely. And the guitar playing on it is great. And I don't know, man, I took a shine of that record. I'm like, wait a minute, top 5, it's got to be all records from this period. But I went and I listened to that again up against some of the other ones. I'm like, what, I still kind of like that record a little more. So yeah, it snuck in here. Move Me, 1994, number 5.
Nice. Good one.
So there you go. All right, what do we got for number 4?
I'm going to go with Loud and Proud. Love this album. The 2 albums in 1973. This is their second one. There you go. Go Down Fighting is just the way it kicks in with a great chorus. Yeah, love that. Love that cover. Drew it many times as a kid, right? but it's just so epic the way it comes in with that chorus and then into the verse, and it's still heavy, but that's a good, like, fist pumping sort of tune. Not Faking It is one of their heaviest songs they would ever do. And we loved it to death as kids. Turn On Your Receiver, not crazy about. Teenage Nervous Breakdown, they do a good job of it on here. It's pretty rocking. Freewheeler is kind of a good dark, road tune. It's a little Deep Purple-ish. This Flight Tonight is amazing. Of course, Child in the Sun, you get to hear, them applying the heavy synths in there. But it's got drums and stuff too, so it holds your interest. Ballad of Hollis Brown, Bob Dylan, 9 minutes long. This was the scariest song of our entire youth of the 70s. It is so creepy. The whole story behind it. 7 people dead, right? That whole thing. I recently did for Goldmine what did we call it? The top 20 roaringest Dan McCafferty songs or something, right? It wasn't exactly the heaviest songs, but it was like the and I had this way up the list because that just freaked us out as kids, right? It was like reading a horror story, right? A short story in school or whatever, right? But yeah, that is just like signature creepy doom. And you talk about doing a good cover. I mean, this is my favorite cover, definitely, that they ever did. But yeah, it just scared the bejesus out of us as kids, that song. So yeah, I'm going to go with that one. I find it, as an album, the way it's put together, it just seems a little more casual than Razum Naz somehow. Maybe it's because it was a little rushed, possibly, right? Just putting out 2 records so fast, but yeah, a good heavy, it's a pretty heavy album for 1973.
Yeah, that's a good one, definitely. All right, P, what do you got for number 4?
All right, my number 4 probably arguably could be my favorite album cover in their catalog. The great Rodney Matthews did this particular album cover, and I think we all, when this album came out, were like, this is going to be the heaviest Nazareth album of all time. It's not quite, but it is No Mean City. And just look at that glorious artwork. It is pretty heavy. And I think Dan sounds absolutely ferocious on this album. I just, you got Zal Clemenson on extra guitars on this album. He's, of course, from the Alex Harvey Band. And I always kind of thought, like, him and Manny together, this would be a thunderous album from a guitar perspective. It is in spots, but it's like, I think it's just got great songs on here, right? Just to get into it is really heavy. May the Sunshine is really catchy. That's kind of like a great pop song. Simple Solution, parts 1 and 2 is heavy. Then you got the ballad Star, which, Hack, you talked about how Dan could sing the phone book and he could do ballads great. Yeah. He sounds so good on Star. I mean, I love that chorus. Yeah. Claim to Fame is heavy. Whatever You Want, Babe is okay. What's in It for Me? He's nice and nasty on that one. And then you got the 2-part No Mean City, which is also pretty heavy. Overall, I think it's a really strong album with very good, memorable songs. Could it have been heavier? Possibly. But I still think it's a really, really great album. It's one of my favorites by them. So No Mean City, 1979.
Nice.
Good pick, man. Good pick. All right. So for my number 4, this is one of this album, in their sort of glory days of the 70s, mid early to mid 70s. This album is one that almost gets kind of stepped over, overlooked for some reason, but I think it hangs right up there with all the rest of them. And I'm talking about this one right here.
Yeah, Rampant's good. Yeah.
Rampant is killer, man. 74 came out. It's a Roger Glover production, and those 3 Roger Glover productions I absolutely love because he just has a way of, it sounds like 4 guys in a studio playing their instruments. Everything has its place. There's, it's not, it's EQ'd perfectly. It's so well balanced, and it just sounds so, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, organic, right? But it just has that kind of feel and that vibe to it. And honestly, a lot of the times I much prefer those types of 70s productions. When we did the Whitesnake show, I talked about this too. Like the British Whitesnake stuff just sounds so good. It sounds like a band. And Roger Glover has a way of sort of capturing that. But yeah, it's a great rock record. I mean, right from the opening, Silver Dollar Forger parts 1 and 2. Like, what an opener that is. That's a killer tune. Glad When You're Gone, and is fun, upbeat song. Loved and Lost, nice slow building tune, with Manny playing some a lot of fuzz guitar on this, which sounds really cool. One of the coolest and just most fun, just hooky as hell songs, Shanghai in Shanghai. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, it's just fun. It's cool. It's funny. It's just a great song. Jet Lag is on this, another cool blues rocker. It goes into it goes into this very long extended jam. There's a little bit of talk box in there, a little bit of slide guitar, and the almost get a little jazzy there. They're on the verge there at the tag out, which is very cool. Light My Way, sort of a psychedelic vibe, but very cool. But the standout for me is Pete's bass playing on that particular song. Pete Agnew as a bass player, nobody talks about Pete. I mean, just like Manny Charlton, actually, nobody talks about these guys, right? In terms of like putting them in, favorite guitarists or favorite bass players or whatever. But that guy always has just the perfect bass tone. And the lines that he's laying down, I mean, it's really a 3-piece band, but the lines this guy's laying down is just incredible. He's not overplaying, he's just playing the right amount, but he's always hitting the marks. And yeah, he's one of the greats for sure. Sunshine. One thing that these guys do a lot, and I'll mention some other songs where what they're playing is they're so simple to the point where they're just literally one chord, one chord, one chord, one chord. But they have such a knack for taking the simplest songs and just making them so freaking beautiful. Sunshine is an example of that. It is so simple, but so beautiful at the same time. That Sunshine for me, and talking about, the ballad thing, and with Dan McCafferty's voice, that's one of my probably top 5 Nazareth songs. And then when Manny comes in with that solo, it's just crushing. I absolutely love that song. The closer, Shapes of Things, kind of a pseudo cover, because then they do this Space Safari kind of tag out thing. That's kind of cool. This one thing that's cool, you mentioned, Pete, earlier about all the different stuff they do. I love that. I love variety. I don't want to hear 10 blues rock songs. I want to hear some up tempo, some mid tempo, some interesting changes here and there. That's the type of listener I am. I always need something new to keep me interested. And this album has a awesome variety of material, and will always keep a listener like me, always keeps them engaged. So Rampant, I mean, it's the forgotten album, I find, of the 70s, because everybody talks about Hair of the Dog, Razamanaz, Loud and Proud. This is like the sort of the poor second cousin kind of thing, but yeah, it's a great album. Anyway, that's
it also
my
doesn't help that they had so many albums released within a short period.
They were all
get a little overlooked,
Exactly. Yeah, they're all like, well, 73 was what? There was 2 albums in 73. Razamanaz, Loud and Proud, 73. I know.
Yep.
Yeah. So there you go. All right. We're down to number 3. What do you got?
Okay, so I'm going to go with Rock and Roll Telephone. So I had a brother named Brad who died October 2014. This was the last album I was able to send off to him. Nazareth was his favorite band, right? And I'm not even sure I even saw Nazareth with him ever, but I'm pretty sure my dad saw Nazareth with him in a bar in Nelson, because heck, like I was saying, this, but these guys will tour BC, yes. They'll go northern BC, Saskatchewan, Alberta. They'll go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
In Canada. So I actually don't have a copy of this, because after he died, we kind of divested of all his CDs, and it got sold off. We sold off everything kind of cheap, and I kind of regret it, because it seemed like every time a Nazareth album would come out, I'd get like 2 or 3 or 4 copies for free sent, back in the CD promo days, right? They'd just be coming in all over, and I'd usually box up a bunch of stuff and send off to him. But this was this cool, it was like a big clunky digipack sort of thing. And they really went all out. They did vinyl for this album. This is the last Nazareth album with with Dan.
With
So
Dan, yeah.
so it's 2014. And I always put it together with, somehow Dan managed to get a solo album out called Last Testament in 2019. And to me, these two records go together because you can really hear his voice is really faltering. Yeah, so that's not it. So that's just a regular version of it.
Yeah.
But it was this big, thick cardboard sort of almost like a Tool album, right? But again, same thing as Big Dogs, The News, Boogaloo. They really have their own sound at this point. And it's this big kind of stodgy, bluesy with Dan's voice just being desperate, right? But it's got some good up-tempo stuff like Back to Before. It's got a good folky one that's like Sunshine, like Winter Sunlight. Rock and Roll Telephone is this slow, cool thing about calling home, always being on tour. Punch a Hole in the Sky, kind of speed metal-y. Long times, kind of more of the funky thing. Jimmy Morrison is a great songwriter. That's the other thing. In these later Nazareth albums, they write every song. There's no more covers anymore, right?
Yep.
And Jimmy is a really like a cool guitarist, producer. Like he's in the production of these things as well. He gives you a lot of different tones. But yeah, towards the end, a couple of really good ones. Not Today, super doomy, kind of nightmarish, regrets and reminiscing and all this kind of stuff. And God of the Mountain, the last one, kind of speed metal-y. Great chords, weird kind of production on it again. I just think this is almost like this is a band that a lot of people don't think of as a particularly thoughtful or like really artistic and creative band. And I think towards the end, they kind of found something in this heavy, doomy, world weary sort of sound mixed with these interesting productions that made for some good albums right at the end. So Rock and Roll Telephone, number 3.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
All right. What's your number 3, Pete?
All right, I'm going to go 1977, Expect No Mercy.
Yeah.
Now, that is one of the great Frank Frazetta paintings of all time, and it's on a top Nazareth album for me. Another one of the kind of heavy ones, but again, there's good variety on this one. Title track is an all-time Nazareth classic. If you haven't heard it, you talk about the simplicity of some of their songs. I think this song kind of does the opposite. It's got these kind of cool little fills from Dan. It's it's got heavy riffing on it and little changes throughout the song. Very, very cool track. Then you got some real stompers on here, like the bluesy boogie of Gone Dead Train. Shot Me Down is more of like a bluesy ballad. Really cool. Again, Dan showing all the facets of his vocal style. Revenge is Sweet is a heavy one on here. Kentucky Fried Blues is just heavy 70s blues rock. Love it. And then New York Broken Toys got a great chorus, really, really melodic song. Busted's another good one. You got Place in Your Heart, which is another ballad. And then I think one of their strongest songs, and it's just a great rock song with a great chorus, All the King's Horses. Such a tremendous catchy song. I really like this album a lot. I think it's kind of underrated, but and with that cover, it's like, oof. So that's my number 3.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
That's the one Pete always points out that on that cover, right? When he brings his arms down, if you look at it, he's going to run straight into his own horns, right?
Yes.
You can't physically be chopping through straight down like that.
No, because he's like the horns are coming out this way, and he's gonna get stuck right there,
right into
right in
the
the middle.
Yeah, great cover though.
All right. Well, my number 3 has already been mentioned, I think, twice. So this comes as no surprise.
Okay.
The Loud and Proud, baby. Another Roger Glover. Man, I just love the records that he produced. The songs on this are great, and the best thing, again, there's absolutely no clutter. You can hear everything clearly. It's sounds amazing. It's a great album, top to bottom. It has the covers, like you guys mentioned, which they did a lot on their records. But the standout is this Flight Tonight. That dung 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 dung, which I heard a story. They were touring with Heart heard the dung 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 dung, and they're like, Barracuda dung 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 dung. That's the story. How true it is, I don't know, but that may have inspired the
And
music.
Nancy always says that. She totally admits
Oh,
that.
okay. All right. So it's for real. Okay. But that's where they got the inspiration for that, or the idea for that. Killer tracks on this. I mean, Not Faking It, you guys mentioned earlier. That's an amazing song. Martin, you're not a fan of Turn On Your Receiver. I love Turn On Your Receiver. It's just a really cool song. Freewheeler, man, that is the hidden gem on this record. Absolutely fantastic guitar work from Manny on this. It's just it's such a cool, understated kind of song, but it is so good, so good. A Child in the Sun, great slow tune, nice changes in dynamics. I can't I'm gonna screw up these titles. I Can't Get Into, is that the name of the song? The ballad. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm saying I Can't Get Into. Sorry, I wrote my miswrote my the. I you were talking about the Ballad of Hollis Brown. Yet I can't get into the ballad.
Right.
It was too long. It was too drawn out. I did like the sort of doomy riff. It almost sounded like a Sabbath thing, kind of going into it. But yeah, that for me was kind of brought it down a little bit. But it's otherwise, it's an absolutely strong album, and there's again a great variety of material on here. Not Faking It, Turn On Your Receiver, some great rockers on this. Yeah, and it just sounds good. I mean, these records, these Roger Glover records, it just sounds so damn good. You know, and the guitar tones sound sweet. It's I don't know. Roger Glover is like a Mutt Lang before Mutt Lang. You know what I mean? It just has that quality of placement and music and instruments and making everything sound like they're there actually doing it. You know what I mean? It's natural sounding. So anyway, that's what my number 3. So there you go.
Cool. Yeah. I'd advise you to try go to the end of Ballad of Hollis Brown. Like it just builds and builds and builds, and then it just builds to this climax. And that doomy guitar is impossibly fuzzy, and it's like this family gets wiped out, and then he goes somewhere in the distance, 7 new people born. It's like, whoa, it's crazy.
I'll give it another shot.
It's a great doomy dirge that just it's unlike anything they've ever done before. I love it.
Well, when that riff comes in, we've used this term before, like the dinosaur riff or the Godzilla riff. That's it's got that really that kind of feel to it, that vibe of doom and dread.
Well, it's almost like a predecessor of drone metal. That tune, yeah,
right.
All right, so my number 2, I'm going to go with Hair of the Dog, which is very much like Led Zeppelin 3. You've got your side of the heavy stuff in a way. That there you go. You drew that on our school books all the time as kids. But side 1 is so good and so beautifully produced. I think this is their best sounding album. And this is basically Manny watching over Roger for all those years. Oh, what's that? What's that? What are you doing there?
Yeah.
And he had his previous career, in I think he worked like in fixing radios or something with the army or something like that. But basically he was technically minded, and basically he picked up enough pointers that once you get to, the guitarist producing the album, it's actually the best sounding album they've ever done. Right. It's beautiful sounding for 1975. So powerful, so much high end, low end. But yeah, it's funny. It's a little bit like Led Zeppelin 3 in that once you get to side 2, it just it takes you on a weird journey. Zeppelin, it's more like a bunch of short folky songs. Here it's more like Beggar's Day is kind of dark and murky, but then Rose in the Heather with this weird A-B, thing on it. That's just sort of like one of these synthesizery ballad things. And then Whiskey Drinking Woman is kind of swampy, southern rocky. And then Please Don't Judas Me is just another long, mellow, strange, spooky, meditative thing. But side 1 is like Hair of the Dog, one of their most famous songs, Messing with Son of a Bitch, and just the cowbell and all that, just beautifully played and put together. Miss Misery, total Sabbath heaviness. And then you either got Guilty or you got Love Hurts. But Change in Times is like one of their heaviest songs ever as well. And that, again, back to the Zeppelin, that's a stop starter, like a Black Dog, right, for them. But yeah, I love this one. It's obviously their most famous album. It's their only. Is it gold in the States or platinum? I always forget that. But it's their only
platinum. I think it made
yeah,
platinum.
it's their only certified album in the States, right? Which is crazy. But and that's all because of Love Hurts, right? Which is a cover, of course, and then Beggar's Day is a cover as well. And it's pretty heavy, like I say. That one's a little bit like Freewheeler, a little bit on I find on Loud and Proud. But that side one is just so it's just I think is the best side they ever put together. And it's very much it always reminded me of Zeppelin 3's heavy side.
Cool. More on that later.
Yeah.
What do we got, Pete, for number 2?
All right, number 2, I'm going to go with 1973's Razzmanazz.
All right.
Could be number 1 because it's damn strong. Some absolute classics on here. The title track is amazing. Alcatraz is kick-ass. Love that riff in Alcatraz. Vigilante Man is great. Woke Up This Morning. I'm not a huge fan of that, but it's kind of fun, like Boogie, whatever. Sold My Soul is another one of these like kind of spooky, creepy, doomy dirges. I mean, they have like one on each album for like a couple albums, which is really great. Too Bad, Too Sad is really heavy. Broken Down Angel is fun. I mean, there's really no bad tracks on it. Night Woman is cool. Bad Bad Boy is great. It's another good sounding album. The guitar tone on here is excellent. And it's just one of a string of really, really strong releases from this band in the 70s that are hard to top. So, yeah, number 2 could, if it wasn't for the number 1, it would easily be number 1. But to me, there's only one number 1 here.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm chuckling because I think we're basically going to have the same 1 or 2, but just
I kind of knew that going in, right? Because 2 of their albums are just a little head and shoulders above the other.
Yeah. So we heard already a little bit about this one, but this is my number 2.
Okay.
Hair of the Dog, which was, from what I read, supposed to be called Son of a Bitch, but the record company said, no way. Gotta call it Hair of the Dog. Yeah. And you guys mentioned Manny Charlton produced it, and this is, from what I was looking at, this is their best-selling record. But I mean, it's the home of, the mega hits, right? The title track and Love Hurts, which is another cover. And that song, man, just that it's so understated. That guitar solo, he got this crazy sustain going, and he's literally just bending one note, and it's beautiful and it's perfect. So, yeah, that is like the wedding song of the 70s. If you went to weddings in the 70s, that's what they were playing. But for me, the deeper cuts is what makes this record shine. You guys mentioned Miss Misery. Miss Misery is like, a lot. It's atypical of those 70s songs, with the big, just heavy block chords and some guy screaming over top of it, AKA BTO with CF Turner. It's that kind of thing, right? That's what I hear with that. Changing Times, has a really cool catchy riff and a nice change up at the end, and the tag out is real sweet. Beggar's Day, oh my god, I love Beggar's Day. What a fantastic mid-tempo rocker with the Rose and the Heather. That little change up tag out thing is just a nice sweet finish to it. Whiskey Drinking Woman, the lyrics on that alone are like, okay, that's like that's just perfect, right? This is a great blues tune. Please Don't Judas Me. It's got that, it's a slow build. It's a nice finish to the record. It's really in that, if you listen to that record, that's like the production. That's the Meatloaf song, the big production song, right? And it ends off beautifully and ends the record great. And yeah, there's no duds on that record. That is a good record top to bottom. Again, with plenty of variety. You got the ballads, you got the up tempo, you got the mid tempo. Sounds great. Well produced, good sounding record. The guitar sound, like you said, amazing. By the way, Hair of the Dog is Day Tripper slowed down, just if anybody wants to know. That's what that riff is, but I've proved it. Anyway. All right, we're down to number 1. All right,
okay.
What do you got?
I'm going with Razmanaz. I just feel like this is a good, serious, snappy. Everything kind of keeps moving. It's sequenced nicely. It sounds gorgeous. Roger's production. It's kind of like I love the way you described it. It does sound like a band playing live. It's very urgent. Mid-rangey, but it's bright and it's got enough bottom end, but it just seems really like combative, right? It seems really aggressive. And yeah, Manny sounds amazing on this. And Razamanaz, when you hear that voice for the first time, I mean, I swear it's got to be one of the most radical, extreme voices as of 1973. I don't know who's crazier sounding than him, right? Like it's that sort of song you would play for your parents, and it would make them mad, right?
Yeah,
because it's pretty extreme sounding, right?
yes.
And then Alcatraz is a cover, but it's really cool. It sounds very much like a Nazareth song. Vigilante Man is also a cover, but it's kind of bluesy and swampy, pretty cool. Woke Up This Morning, we always liked, because like woke up this morning, my dog was dead.
Yeah,
Someone disliked her and shot her in the head.
head.
Like that's a pretty like
Killer.
It for a kid, it's a really rebellious lyric, right?
Yeah.
And then Night Woman's cool with the tribal sort of drums. Bad Boy was just so, even though it's kind of got a bit of a boogie premise, it's still got that slide guitar. And it sounds like Dan's kind of like drunk when he's singing it, right? And he's doing that little Southern drawl thing in it. So it's got a ton of energy, even though it's got a little bit of a retro vibe to it. And Pete's right. Sold My Soul is really sinister sounding. Well, it's called Sold My Soul. I mean, that's pretty bad in itself, right? Too Bad, Too Sad. So heavy, and just like such a butt kicking sort of a groove to it. Pete's bass, the Roger Glover teenage bass notes, teenage eighth notes he called them, right? So that's really cool. Broken Down Angel, we never really minded that even as kids, twangy country tune, but it's up tempo enough, kind of Slade-ish, right?
Yeah.
So for some reason this album just seemed it made Loud and Proud sound a little ragged. It sounds a little unraveled compared to this. This sounds like they're like a really professional band. And yeah, is the first one. Like I don't even remember. It took 2 or 3 more years before I ever heard Exercises, and probably 5 years before I heard Nazareth. So that was kind of weird. It was all the big ones that came out through A&M and were well distributed and selling like crazy that were the big Nazareth albums for us as kids during this period. Close enough for rock and roll, Play in the Game, Expect No Mercy, right? That's sort of that run. So Razmanaz, number 1.
There you go. More on that later. B, what do you got for number 1?
Well, of course, I got Hair of the Dog, number 1.
There you go.
It's this and Razmanaz are easily the 2 best. And, you guys said it all. There's great tracks on here. I mean, Miss Misery is just absolutely immense. And, Hack, you said it great. It's like sometimes simplicity is perfection. And it's such a simple yet bulldozingly heavy song. I absolutely love it. And Dan is like screeching up a storm. Changing Times is terrific. The title track is great. I love Guilty. I love Beggar's Day, which is an old Nils Lofgren song. Just crushing. Whiskey Drinking Woman is a lot of fun. Please Don't Do This to Me is just terrifying. Even Love Hurts. It's I've heard it a million times, but it's such a great performance by the band. It's kind of really cool they can do something like that. So, and it's got an iconic cover, and it's my favorite. I just think it's the most consistent by just a little bit over Razmanaz. But they're both amazing. And if you're anybody watching the show, if you're not really all that familiar with this band, I would say go out and check out Hair of the Dog and Razmanaz. If you're not sold on those 2 albums, well, maybe this catalog isn't for you. But I'd be surprised if you didn't find lots of stuff to love on those 2 albums. So
no. Whenever I hear Love Hurts, I picture like a wedding from 1975 with the crystal ball spinning and the couple dancing in the middle of the hall. That's what I see. Anyways, because I've been there.
Well, that's the back cover of the Greatest Hits album, isn't it?
Actually, it is.
Isn't there a big?
It's a crystal ball in there somewhere. It's a sleeve. I can't remember, but yeah, it's there. All right. Well, no surprise. I mean, like I said, our 1 and 2 are going to be probably the same, but flipped. And so this is my number 1. I mean, Nazareth's Greatest Hits. There it is. It's that record. Top to bottom, it is just awesome, consistent all the way through. Came out in 73. For me, this album, um, like I said, is the greatest hits. It has my favorite Nazareth songs. One of them I mentioned earlier, Sunshine. I absolutely love Sunshine. But there's some other ones on here which I'll get to in a minute. Starts off with the title track. I love records that have great openers, and what better opener is there than Razamanaz? What a fantastic song. And then that leads right into the cool riffage of Alcatraz, which is great. Then you get Vigilante Man. Okay, now we're going to change a little bit. We're going to get into more of a sort of a nice sort of blues, and that song being a cover, but it's a nice blues, But man, the big song for me, and it's so relentless, and it's so powerful, and it's so simple, but it just, some of you mentioned you're not crazy about it. This song absolutely floors me. Woke up this morning. He's just sitting on the car, da, na, 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 and that guitar tone is just killer. And then slowly you hear the kick drum. It just builds. Then all you hear is a kick after a couple bars, boom, boom, and then two flams, and then they're into it. I'm like, oh my god, this is like the coolest shit in the planet. Absolutely love that song. It is so hard. It is so driving. That song hits me where I live, man. And I love the lyrics. Woke up this morning. It's one of those songs that I that's going to be like top 5 Nazareth for me. I absolutely love that freaking song, And it was funny you mentioned, Martin, about the records you're exposed to, right? So I went through the whole catalog and I listened to Exercises, and I was like, oh, there's a song on there called Woke Up This Morning. Well, let's listen to that. I'm like, what? No, outside of the title, zero similarity. And then I read up on it, and apparently Roger Glover said, you guys might want to redo that song, and it might sound better. And then they did it, and they absolutely destroyed. I mean, what a killer song. I love that song. Yeah, so another killer track for me, Bad Bad Boy, with that slide guitar riff. It's relentless. It is a boogie woogie rocker, but it is so freaking cool and catchy. Too Bad, Too Sad. It's another cool rocker. Broken Down Angel. It's a nice kind of ballady kind of song. It's also quite good. There's other albums that might have maybe a few better tunes on them here and there, but for me, this has a reason why it's my number one. This has my absolute favorite songs, and Woke Up This Morning is just there's when you can play one chord for that long and hold my interest and make it cool, you got something going on, man. And these guys can do it. And they did. Sunshine, I mentioned Sunshine. It's the same thing. It's one chord, but it just grabs you. These guys are, amazing. I think this is one of those bands that I think was on the level of the bands of that era. They were I think they were on the same level as an Aerosmith, on the same level as a Thin Lizzy, on the same. But you know what? They just, again, it's sort of that Thin Lizzy thing. They never made it big. Canada, they were huge, but in the US, they just never cracked the market. And these guys should have been a lot bigger because they were putting out some really good shit in the 70s. Yeah. Anyway, that's my speech.
Nice.
Well, there you go.
Cool.
Alrighty. So let's go around and so Martin, what have you got coming up in the new year? Anything? I have the link by the way to Martin's website below. Anything new coming up? New books?
Well, of course, I do have a Nazareth book. This is a big coffee table book, 400 pictures, detailed timeline with quotes. And a lot of quotes from Pete. Pete helped out on it, and did some editing and changing a few things or whatever. But a lot of stuff in that. And actually, just today, I received my first copy of this one, Pink Floyd and the Dark Side of the Moon, 50 years. You can see and it comes in a slipcase like this.
Oh, nice.
So it's like sort of like the Bowie book that I did, but just all you know, a lot of words and different chapters on different aspects of this album, and tons of pictures in full color throughout. So that just came in. I don't have them yet. Won't be at my site for another couple weeks or whatever, but I just got one copy of that. But yeah, all the books, martinpopoff.com. The audio podcast is History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff, and our YouTube channel, The Contrarians.
Cool. What about yourself, Pete?
I mean, just the normal stuff. You know, Martin and I will be doing our regular Friday morning show this coming Friday. We're doing like a excuse me, third of a 3-part series talking about variations on hair / glam metal. So that's coming up Friday morning. Ranking the albums of keyboard player Derek Sherinian, who used to be in Dream Theater.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're doing that on Sunday. Yeah, it's just kind of a lot of wrap up the end of the year shows. We did last night on the Proxy. We did our favorite prog albums of the year. We did the same thing on the Hudson Valley Squares last year with hard rock and metal stuff. So it's just kind of like, it's like a, you know, out with the old, in with the new. So like we're just kind of wrapping up end of 2022 stuff, and then all sorts of new things happening starting in January. So I'll be doing each and every day in January. I do this every January, is albums that are 50 years old in that new year. So this year we're going to be looking back on albums that are my favorite albums that are celebrating their 50th anniversary or birthdays in 2023. So I'll be picking my 30 favorite albums from 1973. So one a day all throughout January. So that's coming up each and every day. That's always fun.
Might be a Nazareth.
Great year for music, man. 73. Oof.
Yeah. That was a good year. Yeah. All right. Well, folks, thanks for watching the show. Much appreciated. I wish everyone a happy new year. If you would like to support the channel, the links are below. That would be much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Make sure you hit a like on the way out. So I just want to wish everybody a happy new year, and more stuff coming up in 2023 with these gentlemen once a month.
It's funny, Hack. I noticed a comment. Did Malice in Wonderland get any love? It didn't even get a mention.
Actually, pretty good album, I think.
Yeah, pretty exciting. It was exciting for that. It gave them kind of some new life, and all of us were forced to kind of like, what do we think of this new kind of Nazareth? And we thought they kind of did a pretty good job on it, but it's not heavy Nazareth. So it was, they got a little blip with that one again, right?
2XS has got some moments on it too, but yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching, and Happy New Year's to everyone, and we'll see you in 2023.
Happy New Year, everybody.